Hello my lovelies, and welcome to my little cottage by the sea, the place where I love to stitch and craft my way to a vintage inspired and sustainable lifestyle. In this video I've put together a tutorial for my newest sewing pattern, a 1940s inspired belt, and this is Ingrid. I am absolutely over the moon with this pattern. I created this pattern many moons ago for my lovely coven members over on Patreon, but because I love it so much and because it's so versatile and just such a win for the wardrobe, I have made it available to whoever would like it, and the links are all below in the show notes. So just a couple of things about Ingrid before we time travel back to me in the past doing the tutorial. Ingrid has some really incredible features. It's reversible, so you get two belts for the price of one. And then the other thing is that it's multi-sized. So you print out the pattern here and you work out your elastic, and it just works for all sorts of shapes and sizes, so nobody needs to miss out. The pattern is a PDF download and you get the pattern pieces here and then the general info, but most of it is contained in this tutorial that I've put together as additional support. We're going to jump in our time machine and go back all the many moons to me in the past, and I'm going to go through the materials and things that you need, and then a detailed step-by-step so that you can make a fabulous Ingrid belt too. I'm just going to go very briefly through materials, and you really do not need a lot. So my original belt that I made is just made out of black cotton sateen that I had left lying around, and I've just used 2 layers of that to create the belt. For this one I'm actually going to use some scraps left over of my favourite fabric, Liberty fabric Honeymoon, and then just some black twill, and I'm just going to try out making this a reversible one just to see what that looks like. So you can see from the entire pattern piece that you could probably get away with just back quarters or just scraps, whatever you need, and you're going to need to cut out 4 of whatever materials you are using. And then you're going to need some elastic in whatever colour you want, but it needs to be 5 centimetres or 2 inches wide and quite a sturdy elastic. I've really noticed when buying elastic that some elastics are very stretchy and others are not too stretchy, and you want one that's got quite a firm stretch. Then you're going to need some heavy iron-on interfacing fusible, one of the only projects where I feel iron-on fusible is acceptable. You need some kind of ribbon or tie to do up your belt. You could put tassels on the end of this, you could do all sorts of things. And then you're going to need eyelets. So I've got these left over from making the Angelica blouse. I really don't like this particular make. These are Prim ones that look like this, and I'm not at all happy with these. I also have a tool to do the eyelets, but I don't like how these are working, these particular ones. So try to get the best possible eyelets that you can, and I would also say that it's probably worth investing in a hole punch, not for paper, but like a leather punch, and it's got a wheel on it that you can turn around to make different size holes. It's actually a really useful bit of kit for, you know, adding holes into belts and things like that. But I actually don't have one at the moment, so I'm just gonna muddle through, but I'm really not happy at the sort of the finish that I'm getting with these. So as I've said, do try and get some really good eyelets because they're such a feature of the design. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to get your pattern, assemble it or trace it out however you want to go about things, and you're going to cut out 4 of these in your chosen fabric. So whether you're just going to cut out 4 of the same fabric or 2 of the outer fabric and 2 of a contrasting fabric, totally up to you. And then you're also going to cut out interfacing. So my original sample, I only interfaced one side of the fabric, and what that actually did was, when you iron on fusible, it sort of changes the structure, the behaviour of fabric, and which is why actually it can be quite a tricky thing to use. You can get very sort of mixed results when you use fusibles. But what it actually did was it caused one of the sides to sort of ripple slightly. So in this particular project, I'm going to line all the pieces with this, or use interfacing on all 4 pieces, and see what that actually does. It just means that the pulling through bit is going to be slightly more aggravating, but I'm sure I can manage. Here are the pieces cut out. So I've got 2 of the black twill, and then 2 of the interfacing to iron onto the wrong side of that, and then 2 more interfacing to iron onto the wrong side of the Liberty print. So I've pinned this one, this panel, and you're going to put right sides together and then just pin all the way around, and then sew all the way around, but leave this non-shaped end, leave this end unsewn. So you're only sewing all the way around, and stop there and leave this open, because this is where you're going to insert the elastic in the next stage. So I'm going to go using Bertha today, and I'm going to sew 1 centimetre seam allowance around both of these. I have sewn both of these, and so they look like this. And the next bit, which is trimming the corners and then turning through, is really, I think, probably the trickiest bit. So I just sort of do them in nice light scoops, like thus, making sure not to sew or cut over the stitching line. And I don't actually do like trim off any of the seam allowance, although you could. There is a storm coming in, and it's suddenly got very, very hot and pressured, and I think there's going to be some thunder happening soon. I'm just at this sort of bit as it goes from the sort of the rectangle bit into this shape. I'm actually just going to notch around there, cut out some little triangular pieces just to help it lay flat. I didn't do this on the initial sample that I made, but I'm just going to see what this does. Snip, snip, snip. Something very satisfying about that sound. And then I'm going to do the same to the other one and then turn through. So I'm using my tweezers, and I found that this was actually sort of the trickiest bit, but you know, whatever works for you works for you. I just find, like, turn over a bit and just find that sort of using that to ease out was the most helpful. So I'm going to spend about 2 hours trying to do this now, and getting a bit cross and hot and bothered as the pressure of the storm builds up. But once you've turned this through, you want to make sure that you get your corners all nice. So all these corners nice, and I'm going to use my corner turner, bamboo point turner from Merchant and Mills, which is a nice little gadget, and then give it a good press so that it's all nice and crisp. Before I do any top stitching on the Ingrid Belt, I need to work out my elastic. So what you're going to do is you're going to subtract the amount that the Ingrid Belt panels are, which is 76 centimeters or 30 inches. You're going to subtract that from your waist measurement. So my waist is 89 centimeters. I'm going to take away 76, which leaves 13 centimeters. So I'm going to cut my elastic 13 centimeters, and what that includes is the seam allowance and the measurement that sort of creates that slight negative ease. So whatever your waist measurement is, take away the 76, and what is left is the amount of elastic you need, and that's what makes this multi-size pattern really straightforward, simple, and I'm very pleased that I worked that out. Press the Ingrid panels, might help to give it a bit of a steam, and the idea is at this end, before we do any top stitching or anything, the elastic is going to be inserted into here. So the way I work that out is I basically turn the 1 centimeter seam allowance at the end and I press that, and then with the crease that the pressing leaves, I then turn that into here and then put the elastic in 1 centimeter and then top stitch that down. I will show you a little bit clearer when I've done this bit, but I'm just going to press 1 centimeter there. You of course may have another way of doing this, and by all means use your preferred way. So I've pressed over the end 1 centimeter like so, and it's got a nice crease, and then what I do is along that crease turn it inward, and actually you could give this another press at this point just to make sure that that is nice and even. I am going to do that, but I just want to show you the process here. And then you can feel the sort of the edge of the seam allowance there. So what I do is I put the elastic in far enough to meet that point, so then you know that you've used your centimeter seam allowance. Might be easier to show you on that side actually. Centimeter seam allowance there, and I'm going to go and press this and just make sure I've done it perfectly. But you would pin this and then top stitch that across there, and I would use a size 12 or 14 needle to do that. Just a normal needle. I wouldn't use a stretch needle, even though I'm doing like elastic. I always use normal needles on elastic anyway. Do that on both sides, and when I've sewn that in, I would then do an edge stitch all the way around the whole panel, just to sort of neaten it. You don't have to, but I just do. If you wanted to do some kind of decorative stitch, you could do that too. This is what it looks like when you've inserted the elastic. Come on, focus, focus, there. So I've just pinned that, and I'm gonna now sew that in place and then sew all the way around, and then it's literally doing the eyelets and your belt's done. I've sewn this side, as you can see, done the edge stitching. So what I do, and I couldn't get an angle to show you this, but I start in the middle here. So I put the needle down and I sew down to here, pivot, lifting up the foot, leaving the needle down, sew all the way around, pivoting at these corner points, then all the way back, pivot here, and then meet back in the center of this this bit here. Last thing is to put the eyelets in, and I have to say that the eyelets that I have are not great, and I'm not going to go over a detailed like how I've put them in because I'm not happy with them, but the eyelet position is on your pattern piece, and just line up the original edge there, and you can use a pin or a pencil, water soluble, or be naughty like me and just use a pencil to mark that point. And then what I would do is I'm actually going to get myself one of the leather punches, which for the moment I don't have, but I'm going to use my awl to get initial holes in. And I have been using the this to sort of create a hole, but it actually sort of almost creates something a little bit too big if you go too mad with it, but for the sake of this, you want your eyelet to fit snugly in here basically, and these ones that I've been using just don't. So normally eyelets come with a sort of a front and a back, and these ones are different. They've developed them on so that there literally is just the one piece, and you put that through, which I am struggling to do because I've got my nails done, but that goes through, and then you use this to punch it into place. But that's basically the last step, and then put some ribbon through. Might actually use black ribbon in this instead of this one, but if you have recommendations for good eyelets, do pop them in the comments, because I would like something better than these. I have been wearing my Ingrid Belt on repeat because as I've done my Swedish deck cleaning of my wardrobe, basically Ingrid goes with just about everything. My whole style this summer seems to be fairy tale, folk, sort of 1940s, 50s, boho, and Ingrid, named for the wonderful Ingrid Bergman, is the perfect accessory for that kind of style. I hope you've enjoyed spending time with me here in my little cottage by the sea, and I'm always so grateful that you do choose to spend the time with me. We have a lot of dirndl action coming up over the next few weeks, which I'm really looking forward to sharing with you. And I hope that wherever you are in the world, my lovelies, you are really looking after yourself in these crazy, crazy times. I shall see you next time. Bye.